Okay, welcome everyone. Today is March 4th, and this is our monthly Kubernetes Steering Committee public meeting. We have almost the entire steering committee today on the call, which is very nice to see. We're missing Ben, but I'm hoping he should be able to join us in a couple more minutes. Welcome, Patrick, as our only community attendee. Um, Quick reminder for everyone, especially the steering members and um, SIG and working group leads. The annual reports are due or were due this past weekend. So if you still owe them, and from what we've been looking at, the data, we still miss a few. A couple more are not merged, but at least they are opened. So please make sure that you are able to finish your reports as soon as possible. And I don't know, does anyone else have any other um, announcements type of a things? I don't think so. Oh, there's Ben. Perfect. Um, so I believe we can move. I don't see Mo on the call. Uh, but we can ask Rita for a little bit to wear her SRC hat instead of a steering one and walk us through the discussion about requiring security audit for newly donated repos, especially with regards to the Kubernetes 6 repo. Because based on the conversation that we've had among the steering committee, it seems that the information that we have available publicly is we clearly state that the Kubernetes 6 repo are not part of the bug bounty program. So I remember we've had a discussion twice in the past year regarding the opt-in functionality for specific repos to say, yes, we want to be part of the bug bounty program or not, and what it could look like. I remember that this was to be discussed with the SRC, and we haven't heard any follow-up from since then. So I don't know, Rita, I don't want to put you on the spot,
Yeah,
but
no worries. I just also pinged Mo to see if he can join since he brought this up.
mhm.
But yeah, the last proposal, um, thanks for the discussion, but I think it's just people didn't have enough bandwidth to hurt cats and get things done because it requires more than just SRC and staring, right? It also requires outreach to all the um, project maintainers and make sure they understand what this means. And again, for cats. There hasn't been much progress on that proposal.
Yeah, go ahead, Antonio.
Yeah, I open an issue because I think that an immediate action we can take is to put the scope that now lives in this HackerRank page in the security committee and ask the projects to go there and pull requests. I saw that we already have some exceptions like Windows and I don't remember CorDNS, etcd. So I think that that will move the SRC to have to do the work to the projects to do the work, saying that, okay, this is the official scope, this is in the repo, SRC decides how to approve, and I'm project full, and I go there and say, okay, I don't want to be eligible for the SRC. At least I think that simplify a lot, and in my opinion, we should have this in the Kubernetes organization repository. having the scope in an external page that doesn't have visibility on who changes and why it changes is a bit opaque for the rest of the project.
Yeah, I think that's a good call. I already reviewed an LGTM for myself, but I also tagged others or poked other other SRC folks to review. I like the paper trail that you suggested. For what it's worth, it was just done that way because that's what reporters look at, and so we could link it right to some page we maintain. Um, Again, I don't want to speak for everybody else in the SRC, so I can only represent myself, right? But as you can see, you're getting like 2 reviews already, right? So I also think that's a good next step. But in terms of, you know, getting people to opt in, I think that will require probably some blogs or maybe some, again, I don't know if we could just do that without a little bit of hand holding. I'm not sure. What do you folks think?
Yeah,
I
go ahead,
think we
Ben.
can blast it out to chairs and tech leads and to devat. It's not the first time we'll have action required tasks for the project.
Mm.
And we can also, I mean, we can lean on like the leads of SIG should be pushing this down to their projects as well. Like this is similar to considering if you should be archiving a project, checking in on their like security health. I was just taking a quick look. I think we might want to do this uniformly for all repos and all orgs. And like, I don't know, maybe SRC will step in to help with like Kubernetes, but I think the org alone isn't enough signal on like, is this going to have enough maintenance and um, responsibility to opt in? I also think we probably need a clear way to indicate the level of support on that. And that's probably going to be the most controversial part in the community. Like, would you want to be the maintainer of a project that explicitly declares that it doesn't have security support?
One question: are we talking about bug bounty eligibility or security support? Because for me,
It's actually
that's
both. They're actually both, right? Like I think that's actually I want to clarify that a bit. So the HackerOne Kubernetes page, right? It explicitly talks about what's in scope, what's not in scope, and what is uh, qualify for bounty and not. Those are actually not the same, right? So, for example, sub projects under 6, they're actually in scope in terms of we still work with maintainers to vet the report and get CVEs out. Or create CVs and get the fixes out, like following embargo process. We still do that. It's just they're not qualified for bounty. So kind of different in that sense.
yeah, and shouldn't the SIG leads and chairs be also responsible of that work? I mean, I don't think
They're
the problem that
responsible.
is okay.
Yeah. Sorry, they're
Well,
responsible in that they are part of the fix team, right? Like that we always reach out to them and ask them to follow up on the actual fix and we work together, right? For sure. And this is where this is I guess like the old proposal from like early 2025. That's how it came about because we felt like a lot of the some of the projects didn't have the right security contacts and sometimes when we reach out it didn't have the right like response time, right? So we couldn't actually move forward in a lot of these CVE fixes.
Yeah, go ahead, Ben.
Um, Rita, maybe you and the SRC can come up with a like proposed list of requirements for these projects. One that jumps to mind to me that I think we've discussed in the past, you touched on security context.
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe updating to a more useful format would be one of the ways that we know that a repo has caught up. The current security context format where it just has their GitHub handle seems difficult to follow up on.
Yeah, that's another issue. Like actual email contacts for sure. But even the GitHub like contacts sometimes aren't even up to date. So usually what we do is like when we actually work with them on the fix, we also remind them, hey, can you go update your security contacts, right?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
maybe one of the things we can expect them to do is to switch over to including email contacts. Some groups would also be able, like Kate's Infra for those repos, would have like the private alias that could just be used
Mm-hmm.
for the SIG instead. I think that would make sense in a couple places, and you can't really do that with the current format. But if people had to switch formats, then that's like very noticeable that okay, this repo still has the out of date format. Clearly, they haven't done anything.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think all this was part of the that proposal, like how to update contacts, how to like actually opt in, like the requirements, as you said. I believe it was captured in the doc because we had the same discussion. I think it's just we don't have enough people to drive it forward. I think I was doing it, but then I got other things landed on my lap, so even what you suggested, like use emails instead of GitHub handles, like that requires help, like people to can make the changes or whatnot. So I don't.
Well, there's two parts to this, right? There's the what we expect people to do and getting consensus on that, and then there's driving people to do it. I think
Mhm.
there's a more of us can be involved in driving people to do it than like setting the requirements. We will want SRC to agree to all the requirements and then maybe pass by steering. If we can get that hurdle done, then we can farm out the Git projects to do the updates.
Yeah, let me I don't have the link in front of me, but let me try to look up the proposal that I shared like from a year ago and see what it has. If one of you folks have it handy, that would be good. And if that doc doesn't have what you're saying, yeah, I could take a stab at it and then we can go from there. But I think in general, SRC people who are involved in the SRC are usually like already stretched really thin with other responsibilities. I'm sure it's like the same here. So I guess this is me saying yes, we can define these processes and requirements, but unless we have humans to do the work, it's just it's just text on a piece of paper.
I think we can drive this similar to the annual reports. I think steering collectively can reach out to chairs and tech leads and down from there and expect projects to update. The other thing is if no one does the work, then their project is de facto not opted in, right? So that's an okay failure mode.
Okay, I also think that we should not, I don't know, now create a sensation that everything is unsecure. But my question is, I'm still unclear on the bounty versus the security thing. What is the security context related? And what is the my understanding is that the problem is that the bounty bring a lot of work to the SRC, right? And I think that I mean it could be good, but it's also sometimes like the English engineering situation. It creates a lot of work and pain in the community. But the part that I don't think we should have is projects without security contacts. So I mean, that project should be archived if they don't have security contact.
Yeah. I shared the link to the opt-in model proposal in the steering committee chat if you don't mind opening it. And I see Mo has his hand up.
No, I
I
was just waving as I'm here. I don't know what we've talked about so far, so I'm happy to chime in on whatever. I just don't know what state we're in right now.
um I think we have like two topics that we're talking about that can be resolved in parallel. One is the the model for opting in into bug bounty slash SRC purview. And second is the clarifying what the bug bounty program does. I think that the PR that Antonio opened, that is also linked in the agenda, that particular topic can be handled already. And we can already use that as something that we can remind all the chairs and tech leads that this is the scope of the bug bounty program. And along that, we can also ask them to please make sure to re-review your security contacts and make sure that they are up to date, especially for all your sub projects that your SIG is responsible for. And in parallel, we can handle the opt-in model for the SRC scope.
So, again, I don't know what you guys have spoken about so far, but let me just clarify, like where my head was at when I, sent that email out and just, trying to get some feedback. Regardless of whether something is like, in scope for our bounty or whatever, like the bounty primarily creates like a monetary burden on the CNCF, but it doesn't meaningfully impact the SRC itself because just no, even if there was something that was like in Kubernetes 6 that's like out of scope, right? If someone sends us a report and it's like not Ingress Nginx, which we have explicitly communicated we don't do stuff for really, and even there's an asterisk. The work for SRC is the same. Like we are still the CNA. We will still have to go issue the CVE ID. We will still have to do all the disclosure. Really, the primary difference is when we say something's not in scope, we just give you a bonus, and we just make the bonus match what we would have given you as a bounty anyway. So the bonus just communicates that technically that's not in scope of our bounty, right? But the sort of the burden and the work on the SRC doesn't meaningfully change, and it sort of grows indefinitely every time we add anything to either Kubernetes or Kubernetes 6, right? And so I think it's pragmatic to have some security guardrails around that
So Mo,
process.
we're not just discussing bug bounty scope, we're discussing scope for being supported by SRC.
Was that a question or a statement?
As a statement. So we're aware that it's not limited to just the bug bounty, and we were discussing an opt-in model for support at all. Like you have to meet these requirements, and you have to go through them to get opted in, which is
Right, but then
separate but
consider what
related to
happens
the.
when you haven't opted in. Like, let's consider the NVIDIA DRA driver, right? Let's say it's an opt-in model, they haven't opted in, that there's a CVE in the project. What do you think is going to happen?
I mean, we can document that they have to reach out to the maintainers of the repo. GitHub has a mechanism for reporting vulnerabilities, right? To the
Yeah, and then
maintainers.
what do you think those people are going to do?
I mean, they're welcome to attempt to reach out, but if we tell them they can't, right? Like that's not different from our other committees.
Pragmatically speaking, right? Only bad things come out of that worldview, right? Is that either people will end up making public issues, which has happened before. The maintainers won't know what to do, and so then they'll reach out to the SRC, and then SRC will do the same work that they would have done anyway. Um, so I think you end up in the same exact state, which is CVEs are not the same as regular bugs. You have to have basically security guardrails around the process.
But but there is a mechanism for reporting security bugs, right? And so we can shunt them off to that mechanism and say, this is not in scope for the SRC. Do not contact the SRC for this like demo project. I don't think we want to say the community cannot build like prototypes and demos because it'll have to have CVEs. It's reasonable to have code that just does not receive CVEs.
So I'm not necessarily super worried about stuff like I would be fine with you saying, "Oh, this is a demo thing," so I explicitly opted out. That's kind of not the target that I'm concerned about, right? I am concerned about things like the DRA NVIDIA driver, right? Not because I think it has any security issues, but because it is important and it is complex and there's a lot of moving pieces, right? And those
Sure,
things
but the
can
distinction between demo code and this is like an early prototype that hasn't been into the model yet and still needs review isn't substantive. Like they will need to go through the process. That process can include a security review.
when would you expect the NVIDIA DRA driver to go through such a process?
When they go through opt-in. Because as I pointed out, if you do this on the donation, that isn't adequate because we will just see people stop donating things and start donating empty repos to build it. We do this pretty often. Like at Google, I'm almost exclusively going to do that because it is way harder for me to create a repo and then get it moved in than to ask Kubernetes for a repo and write the code from scratch there. And if you add this process, it makes it even harder. So I will just always do that. And then we're never getting that review. So instead, that early repo needs to be treated the same as a early donation that like it's not opted in yet. It's still in the prototype stage. At some point when the project wants to declare that this repo is mature, they should go through this opt-in and get a review. And until they have a review, they are not opted in and they are out of scope and they can't receive CVEs because it's still an early project. Take, for example, something like KindNet. That's been in and out of the project back and forth. But like at some point, this was just like some very whip prototype code. At some point later, maybe people are using it in production and then we need to go through this review. But the whether or not it was donated isn't really the key point. It's the when it becomes production grade. And part of declaring it production grade should be going through all the things that SRC thinks are necessary for it to be permissible to be in scope. And if they like fail the audit, then they're not going to be in scope until they fix it.
So how do you make sure that the community understands the supported level of a repo?
I think we're
And
going to need to document that like at the top, both in the security program, but also just like in the repo README. We already have some requirements for the repo READMEs. We can add a requirement that the
I guess I would ask why would we not just make a separate org that's like Kubernetes SIGs unsupported and put everything there, and then when you're
because
ready,
because we have hundreds of existing repos.
yeah, we can just say the existing ones are supported because that's what we do today.
Well, let me because you're
So yeah,
going
go ahead, Antonio. You
previous
had
one.
yeah.
So I just wanted to try to zoom out a bit. I think that there is an interesting thing is that we are operating onto the assuming the worst, and I want to think as to people assuming the best. The only thing that I think that we should be is more strict when the worst happened, right? We have this situation, we were involved with SRC and it took 4 years to archive the project. So I think that I'd like to see a model where we assume the best from the people and the project is more strict on executing when things go worse, and that sets a precedent for future projects to not doing the wrong thing. So I don't know if that model can fly more with you, right? Instead of we document this thing. I mean, you need to have security, whatever thing. You need to have, I don't know, no CVs or answering whatever thing with very clear metrics. And the moment that you don't meet those metrics and you cannot justify that you don't meet it, we just archive or delete the project in one day. That will allow people to, to try to do the good thing without a lot of regulations. And well, you know that if that happens, people will think twice in leaving a project orphan. I don't know, what do you think about focusing in the other way, on the punishment if you don't, on the fail open?
I guess, one way to sort of force action, right, is we could, for everything that we aren't 100% sure about, right, we could just default to requiring README updates that say it's unsupported because it hasn't gone through security review, right? And if people care, they'll make the changes necessary.
What I think that we should allow is people to have creativity, to add repos, to thrive, to explore. But we also, it's what you say, we need to make it, it's, oh, now this is in prod. You are signing something for the project, so you are the face of the project. You cannot do whatever you want. I think that's the tension we need to handle, and I think that creating like what is the science, the incubation sandbox and or these stages may be a good idea. But what I try to avoid is if we put too much regulations and overhead, we are not going to allow people to create projects. And if we don't create projects, we are going to be stuck forever. Sorry, Rita, you are.
Yeah, I just want to clarify, like, when we say security audit, is that the same like CNCF audit that we've done in the past, or different?
I don't know if it's super well defined. The CNCF audit is,
Is that
time
what you were
consuming.
thinking?
Is that a question to me?
Yes.
Not necessarily. I would rather have the domain experts that we have within our community go through it with like a very adversarial mindset, and less of we find some vendor that might not have any Kubernetes experience try to break the thing. Yeah, that's what I would tend to prefer, right? Like, like I said, as I've used the secret CSI driver as an example, right? That was a project donated to SIGAuth, right? And it was reviewed by the tech leads to make sure that it met SIGAuth's requirements.
Sure.
Um,
So the reason behind this question is like, if we think the opt-in model is sort of the future, and as Ben mentioned, right, we should try to document requirements for what does it mean for an opt-in repo and what are the requirements that they must meet. And so I want to kind of incorporate what you're thinking. If you think some type of security audit should be part of that list of requirements, let's add it to this document. I don't think that is currently, and I think this is the first time we're saying some type of security audit should be required to opt in.
I'm also a little bit concerned about the staffing for that. Part of why I think it maybe should be an async opt-in process versus like punishing projects for being donation based versus going the from scratch backdoor route. Um, it we might not always be able to immediately spin up the like audits, and we will have a backlog for existing projects to consider. But if that is part of an opt-in, then that's acceptable because those projects are just out of scope until we're able to catch up.
like, would y'all be more like? I think for me, it would be preferred. Like, so I'm not worried about the trying to enforce it at donation time, but I think what I would want as part of the donation is an update to a project's README saying that it's not in scope and it should not be used in production. And if they're not happy making that change, then they can still do that. Like, they can still donate it, they can still put that there and then immediately work towards fixing that, right? So they can keep going. And I would say if you start a new repo, it just has to have that on the top of the README. And you can go work on removing it whenever you're happy, right? Then I don't think we unfairly punish people that start from scratch versus people that donate in good faith.
Agreed. I believe we actually already have guidelines about things that you must have in the README, so it shouldn't be problematic to add something else.
But the hard thing that I found is what is the definition of production ready? Because I know a lot of projects that are production ready that I don't consider production ready. So who sets that bar?
Uh, to me, probably the best one is whichever SIG owns the project, right? Their leads need to, with their domain expertise, say, yeah, I think this is good, right? Like that's why I don't want like some random third party trying to like do security audits, right? Like I want people whose job it is to be good in that particular field to say, yeah, I feel confident that I would put this in production myself because I understand how it's implemented and I believe it to be robust, right?
Yep.
And we should ask those same people like, hey, like, you know, you can ask people like leading questions that make them think about the security of the system based with their own domain knowledge inserted in. And that tends to be, in my opinion, like the best way because they are the people that understand it the most, right? You just tend to have to just give them a little bit of hints like, hey, like, is this API you made? Is it developer facing? Is it a cluster admin facing? How do you expect the RBAC to be expressed? All those things, right? Like once you ask them these questions, they can tend to respond very reasonably because they have a mental model. It just doesn't necessarily tend to be expressed in security constraints. It tends to be like, oh, this is a NVIDIA thing. So like it's more about like how much throughput I can get out of the GPU or something.
I don't think that nobody disagrees, but you need to think that we need to articulate this and we need to apply this consistently, right? We cannot create now exceptions, this or the other, right? So this has to be, we need to change the donation rules. We need to ask the, we need to be able to hard code or to codify this new pattern. I mean, we need to do a lot of these things, and the new projects need to go through this, right? We need to operate on the generalize the
I
part.
want to be clear. I'm not saying that new projects need to go through it at donation time. And if the new project is just an experiment, then they never have to go through it, right?
But that's the thing. It's, what is an experiment? What is the other thing? We need to be clear on that. The moment that we need to start to put rules, we need to make clear, right? When the thing stops to be an experiment, when it graduates, when it's production ready, when you need to put it here.
I mean, that's literally what the proposal from the SRC was, to have an explicit process for saying yes. And I'm guessing, and from what I'm hearing, is basically we would basically make the SIG leads responsible for opting in into the process. And if I remember correctly, what was written in that proposal, a second step was that a proposal would still be reviewed by the SRC and approved by SRC. And only
Yeah.
then it will be part of um, the SRC overview, basically.
Do you
So
mind
I
scrolling down in the doc? It's exactly what you're saying. Yeah, this section.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
the complaint is SRC is not who dictates what is production ready, right?
the production. So the difference
That's why
the
I'm trying to see because we
what
are moving to a lot of. Let me finish and again. We are moving to a lot of regulating things, and when people go to regulating things, we are going to deal with all these regulations to interpret this law. So I'm trying to see if we can go to a easy to understand and simple thing, and to avoid having in the project organisms that can block or better things. I think.
So I believe that the production readiness of a particular project will mean different things for different people and different organizations. And I don't think that's something that we should be or we would want to apply for every single sub project.
Yeah, I
Um,
wouldn't be, if I could intercept just a bit, as an SRC member, I'm not super concerned about production readiness because a lot of that can be about like scalability and like observability. SRC doesn't care about that. Only thing I'm going to ask of the leads from like an SRC perspective is like, hey, like, have you just thought through the threat model of the system? Do you feel like if someone used this in an environment that they cared about, that it wouldn't lead to like privilege escalation or memory corruption or data loss that can then be, interpreted in other ways, right? Those are the things I care about. Like, if it can only handle 30 users and at the 31st user the thing falls over, like I don't care. Like that's fine. We almost never issue a CVE for like DOS stuff because like it's just
And
not relevant or super important.
I think
Okay,
the
so
phrasing for this will matter a lot.
Yeah.
And I think one other thing that's different from last time we discussed this is there's a little bit of clarity on this is not one to one with opting into bug bounty, which is its own like subtopic. There's like being supported for processing, and then there's the actual in scope for bounty. I think the bit where Antonio has been digging in on that and seeing if we can get that documented somewhere else with like revision history and stuff clarifies this a bit.
so what I'm hearing is that roughly all of us agree with the opt-in model. At this point in time, it's only about figuring out what the process should look like, including most example of these are the questions you have to answer, which would be, I would assume that, oh, if you're interested in opting in into security program, this is the form that you have to fill in and answer all those questions, and then SRC can review the answers, which would be somewhat similar to what we're doing with the production readiness on CAPS these days. And then they would say, yes, you're good, or not, you're not. And then the lead, in cooperation with the appropriate sub-project owner or per request from a sub-project owner, is the one initiating the process. And I believe it's just about making sure that this is clearly documented and then just announce it to everyone and make sure that people are following the process.
I also think we want to take just enough time to think about what is missing today aside from that audit, like useful security context, and make sure we take the opportunity of instituting this process to get everyone to fix that. I don't know if there are other things. That one seems pretty obvious, but if there are other things, we should try to include that. Because we can't press the button of like, hey, everyone in the project needs to do updates constantly. We should take advantage of this opportunity to fix all of the security related bits that we can.
Totally agree with that one. I mean, I would already announce the scope and the PR that Antonia has with regard just the scope and remind all the leads, please double check your security contacts. And then once we establish the full process for opting in, that'll be another opportunity for, and by the way, have you checked your security contacts? And then whatever else will be requested as part of um, the review. Okay, so the way I'm seeing this for now is we have the PR from Antonio, that's one thing. And then I'm guessing SRC will be putting together the process for what the opt-in, which basically means refreshing the doc. Is that correct, Rita?
When you said doc, you're talking about the HackerOne page,
I
right?
mean the proposal for the opt-in
Yeah,
model.
I mean, so um, yeah, the proposal is yeah. So I think if you go to like the next step section, that's kind of where things are. So I guess I could pick this back up again. Um, yeah.
My one suggestion is maybe we should split it between just like in and out. Maybe there's some way for a project to have explicitly noted that like it's not intended to be in scope for this sort of thing because it's like a demo or whatever.
Well,
so that
I
there's a
think
more
based
like
on
positive outcome of like asserting that you're not going to meet the security bar, but it's not through like inaction. It's just intended for the project.
yeah, based on the proposal, right, what we're saying is once this process is established, then the project that have opted in will have some kind of SRC supported thing in this project security README, right? So it essentially, if you don't have that, then it's not in scope, and also like in the proposed change, if you go back to that section, um, I believe there's something that says like, once a project is in scope, then it actually gets added to the list of in scope components, right? So like the an Antonio's PR, like we would actually explicitly, once this process is approved, then that page would have the opt-in list, right? And
That
so
makes sense. Maybe we can drop the whole like badge tangent then if we can just put it in the security
yeah.
document. Um,
Well, that
that's the part I
was
was thinking about is like if we're making it super super visible, then we probably want like some tiers other than hasn't hasn't gotten opted in or like is fully supported.
yeah, right. So yeah, I think I can take a stab at clean this up and share with folks for like maybe comments and approval, and then we'll go from there. I um yeah, I'll try my best to do all this. I'm just saying, look, right now it's basically just me doing this from the SRC, so yeah, yeah, I'll try.
I feel like we could probably make some suggestions too, but I definitely hope that like
Oh,
other
for
SRC
sure.
members can get
Yeah.
input.
I mean, feel free to make suggestions in this doc. I think you guys already made a lot of really good suggestions. So I think it's just a matter of getting a PR out, right? With the documented process and the templates and all that, right? Okay, I can do that.
Great, thank you. See Mo had to drop. I believe that's the only topic that we had in the agenda. Does anyone else can have anything else that they want to discuss? No, cool. So the last remaining thing is who is interested in running the call the next time? From what I've looked at the calendar, it falls on the April the 1st.
It's not the cube. It's the after KubeCon. Okay.
Yes, it's the week after KubeCon, correct.
I can do the next private one. The next public one, I'm out.
I am around for the next public one.
When is the next public one? Is this April
April
the 1st?
1st.
Yeah.
April 1st.
I will do it.
Okay, so I have Kat and Antonio. You want to fight
Kat,
for?
no, Kat was saying that she can do it. Okay.
Oh yeah,
Sorry,
I can do
I
it.
thought that she said that she couldn't. Okay,
Okay.
thank
Oh
you,
yeah,
Kat. You take it.
no problem.
Okay, I am putting Kat there. Cool. Thank you very much, all.
Okay, one sec. While I
And
have all of you here, we need to update the session for the panel. We need to figure out who is going and update that list. Since I'm not gonna make it.
Okay, fine. We just like when I submitted those, I just chucked in like a selection of us for each one. It was always
Yeah.
meant to be temporary. So like I think I am not optional since Rita will not be there. I have to do both of them. But for the other two, just like let me know who is going to be at Maintainer Summit and who is going to be at KubeCon proper, and I will handle swapping out the speakers.
Thank you. Yeah, the CNCF tends to appreciate being updated about the correct list in advance. So I wanted to make sure that we don't
They do.
forget.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll handle it. Just let me know who's going to actually be there, and I will make sure that the names are correct.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okie doke. Thank you very much, all. See you next time.
Bye.